When we talk about certain NBA players and how smart they are, we usually refer to their basketball IQ because, well, that's what matters on the court. But academically, how smart are they? When we watch players like JaVale McGee, for example, who's been on Shaqtin' a Fool so many times, and most people would say that he has a very low basketball IQ. But believe it or not, JaVale is actually a pretty smart guy off the court. In high school, he graduated with honors and earned a 4.5 GPA. You probably would not think that if the only thing you saw of him was his play on the court. But yeah, he was an incredibly bright student. Even Andre Iguodala has stated that JaVale is one of the smartest people he's ever met. He's just a huge nerd. Russell Westbrook is another player who most fans have criticized for having a low basketball IQ. Throughout his career, that's been the major knock on his game. Despite being extremely talented, athletic, and skilled, sometimes he just makes bad decisions with the ball. But did you know Westbrook actually had a 3.9 GPA in high school, and he was even offered a partial academic scholarship to Stanford? Yeah, he did. According to an interview, Westbrook said that Stanford did not recruit him for basketball, but for academics. He was about 6th or 7th in his high school class, and he was actually going to go to Stanford if he could not get an athletic scholarship to play basketball. Of course, UCLA eventually brought him in to play, which let him pursue his basketball career. Westbrook said that he studied really hard in school, and he was pushed by his parents because they knew his education would be important if basketball didn't work out. But it all worked out in the end though, so that's cool. We got some other players who deserve a mention as well. Shane Battier was a 2-time Academic All-American at Duke and the Academic All-American of the Year in 2001. He's also known as one of the league's biggest tech geeks, and he recently got hired by the Miami Heat to lead their analytics department. Danny Granger scored a 30 on his ACT and he got accepted into Yale University, but he ultimately decided to go with basketball instead. During his time in the NBA, he was constantly working on side projects and even created his own real estate investment company. Jeremy Lin went to Harvard. Festus Ezeli graduated high school at 14 years old and took mainly college-level courses when he was still really young. He wanted to be a physician, but with his height and size, he eventually settled to playing basketball instead when he moved to the US. Pau Gasol attended medical school at the University of Barcelona, and he can also speak 5 different languages. Bill Bradley attended Princeton University, became a Rhodes Scholar, and went to Oxford University for grad school and studied economics, and then he became a senator after he retired from the NBA. Then in 2000, he ran for president. I made a video before covering his life in more detail, so I put a link to that video if you want to check it out later. Tim Duncan. He was one of the smartest players ever on the court, but also off the court too. He graduated with a degree in psychology at Wake Forest, and as a student, he helped his professor write a chapter of his own book called Blowhards, Snobs, and Narcissists: Interpersonal Reactions to Excessive Egotism. Yeah, it's a pretty fitting title for a guy like Duncan, especially since he was someone who has shown very little ego throughout his NBA career. Emeka Okafor had a 4.3 GPA in high school and a 3.8 GPA in college at UConn. He majored in finance and graduated with honors in just 3 years, while also being named the Academic All-American of the Year in 2004. Chris Bosh was part of the National Honor Society in high school, and in college at Georgia Tech, he was a member of the National Society of Black Engineers. During his NBA career, it was well known that he loves to code. He likes programming and also supports Code.org, a non-profit organization that encourages students to learn about computer science. Jaylen Brown. Before he got drafted to the NBA, some teams were actually scared of picking him because of his intelligence. In college at California, Brown took a graduate-level course in his first semester as a freshman. Up until this day, he still remains in contact with his old professors, picking at their brains about anything to help him learn more because he loves academia. Those were a bunch of players who found success academically, but on the other hand, there were some players who were not as good in school. You can look at Derrick Rose, for example. He failed the ACT 3 times in high school, but then he passed the SAT to get into college. However, later on, it was discovered that someone else took Rose's SAT for him, so his entire freshman season with the Memphis Tigers was vacated. Ben Simmons is another guy who recently had issues in school. In his freshman fall semester at LSU, his GPA was lower than a 2.0. During games, the fans of opposing teams would sometimes chant GPA whenever Simmons had the ball to try to get into his head. That's actually kinda funny. Kevin Garnett. On the court, he was one of the smartest basketball players ever, but in high school, he did not score high enough on the ACT to get into college. That was part of the reason why he decided to go to the NBA directly after high school. Even if he wanted to go to college, he could not because his ACT score was too low. And there you have it, folks. There's probably a couple of other players that I missed that deserve.
There's a reason why they watch all night long.